Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, wherever you're joining us from. Please join in the comments throughout and welcome to this Monday edition of Celtic Down Under, the weekend review, hosted by myself, Sean, joined by Anthony, Tommy, and Paul. How are you, Anthony? How was your weekend? Did you stay up late on Saturday?
I did. I had a wee 20-minute power nap about midnight. And I was like, oh, and then just woke up and I was like, I was refreshed. And that was me. I was all good to go. So I actually watched the whole game. Few mid-strengths, but nothing not too serious. And yeah, we are treble winners yet again.
Yep. Paul, how you doing?
I was better until this morning, but we'll get to that. I had a good 3-hour kip before the game. I had an early night, and best part of 3 hours, and then up and at it fresh for the match. Obviously, brilliant result. Great to win the title. Great to win another treble. Not the greatest of games, I suppose, but we'll get into the nitty gritty of that. But yeah, up and down last 3 days, I would say, which is probably the same for everyone listening too.
Tommy, how was your Saturday night?
Yeah, pretty similar. I didn't manage to fit in a nap. I did think of heading out and watching it at the Celtic Sports Club, but decided against it, just given the time of night, and wouldn't be getting home until at 3, 4 in the morning. So stayed up, watched it at home. Wasn't the greatest game, wasn't the greatest performance, but all that mattered was getting the win, and we dug it out again. And a pretty quiet weekend from there today, which is it's not unexpected, but I'm sure we'll get on to that.
Yeah, the supporters club didn't have a late license, so everyone would have basically been heading over to the kebab shop for drinks as soon as the game finished, because they all had to have their drinks finished by like whatever it was, like 2:45 or something, which was before the end of the game. So FEs would have been pretty busy at that time. We had I had it on at my supporters club, so a few of us stayed and watched it, and some guys headed out to casino. It was a big night. To be honest, I was up from 6 a.m, so I don't know how I managed to stay awake, but I didn't get home till 3 a.m. It was good though. Good to celebrate. Good achievement. So to win our 8th treble. So we'll chat about the game first. Okay, so it was pretty much the expected starting lineup with Maeda coming back in for Abada, even though that change was reversed at half time. Anthony, how did you see the game as a whole?
Well, Billy Dodd sort of beforehand was sort of saying that, Inverness CT Thistle would to come out and have a bit of a go and put us under pressure and really sort of take the game to Celtic, and it was probably anything but that. 10 men behind the ball, very defensive, blocking a lot of space. It kind of felt like when you're flicking through Netflix and you look at those Harlan Coben mystery series on Netflix and you're thinking, have we watched one of these before? Have we seen this before? The ones with Richard Armitage, they all look the same. You can't really tell. And that's kind of like this was like. It was like playing against 10 behind the ball and same, like, having to break down. And it's a cup final. It's like you've exceeded all expectations getting there. Why would you not come out and have a go? And they just decide to sit in and offered absolutely nothing. So with that aside, we were probably a bit, we were good up until the final third, and then probably for the first half an hour or so, just that final pass, that final ball, just couldn't quite unlock the defense. And then O'Reilly had a chance. He sort of made the inside run, got the ball through, and he just sort of, in two minds whether he shoot across, and it sort of just keeper picked it up and went, well, actually, that's the first time that we've really sort of penetrated their back five or whatever it was. And then literally 3 minutes later, same run. AJ puts the ball through, O'Reilly in, and then we obviously get that first goal. And then it's, it completely changes the complexion of the game from then on in. That was absolutely, smooth sailing. A bit of a sloppy goal to lose at 2-1, but I didn't really feel we were under any real threat. And we got the icing on the cake at the end. So performance-wise, for a cup final, it was probably a little bit of a low ebb, but I think the players have just been flogged this season, to be honest. And we've talked about this, the size of the squad, going at the same players, going at the well over and over again. They found the form against Aberdeen. They put in a decent enough performance. Effort was there, but I just felt that as far as an actual, true, fully polished Celtic performance, it probably wasn't quite up to it. But it was more than enough on the day, and I can say, thankfully, we've walked away treble winners.
Yeah, curiously, Ange said after the game that the players looked nervous. Did you see that, Paul, or did you think it was something else?
I didn't see his comments that he said they were nervous. I didn't think we looked particularly nervous. To Anthony's point, I think they just congested the final third and just clogged up the play. Look, they didn't really lay a glove on us. I agree. I think you'd expect at some point for them to have a go. Even at 2-1, they didn't really have a crack. I don't really remember them producing anything of any note. It was one of these games where you never really, well, not never really, you just never at all feel in any doubt that you'll get a result. You just, it's a matter of time. Because there was no ambition from their side. And if you knock on the door long enough, they'll make a mistake. There'll be some tiredness. The golfing class was there as well. So no, I didn't really think so. I think one or two people were off the game early on. Obviously, Maida didn't come back out after half time, and he was looking like he had an ice pack on his calf or ankle, so he's probably picked up a knock. But, he didn't get much change out of it. But difficult to do when they're going to sit as deep as they are, and he got around the back once and got a cross in. But yeah, other than that, not too much. And then, look, Hatate was, trying to force the issue and not a lot coming off for him. I thought Matt Riley was probably our best midfielder, certainly in the first half at least. And obviously it was his unlocking of the defence that opened the door for the first goal, and obviously Kyogo does what Kyogo does. And after that, really, it's for me, it's never out at that point. But I wouldn't say nervous as such. Obviously, all the pressure was on us. Like, there's literally no pressure on ICT at all. But I didn't think the players. I think actually the players strolled through a lot of it. To be honest, there wasn't a great degree of urgency really at any point.
Yeah, Pete McGee in the comments saying Joe Hart was doing push-ups in his goal for most of the game. I don't know if he's been literal or not, but it wouldn't be surprising. The stats show that Caley Thistle had one shot in goal the whole game, so they had 100% conversion for shots on target, which means Joe Hart literally didn't make a save. They apparently recorded 2 other shots, which would have been off target. I don't recall those. Tommy, maybe you do. Mahesh, Celtic's momentum data, very underwhelming most of the match, especially first 30 minutes. Not enough to create goals well off the pace. Tommy, what's your take on it? Were Inverness just behind the ball? Were we uninspired? What's going on?
I think it was a combination of both, to be honest. I didn't particularly enjoy it at all. I was hoping that we'd come out like we did against Aberdeen last week when we were really sort of fired up and we moved the ball quickly. Our passing was crisp. It was, people were moving off the ball. Our intensity was good. I felt the first half we were just a bit off it. And I think that came up. I thought O'Reilly was a bit off it, to be honest, in the first half until he sort of had that moment before he made the goal, and then a great setup for the goal. But I just thought we were a bit pedestrian. And when we had the opportunity, when they did come forward a few times to actually break on them quickly, we were a bit slow in getting forward. So I thought we just went quite at it in the first half. And Maeda, I think Maeda's strength is when the defence is pushing up and he can get in behind and use his pace. When the defence is sitting deep, he doesn't really have too many tricks. Like, it's knock a ball past him and try and get in. So wasn't too surprised to see him come off at half time. Second half, I thought we sort of stepped it up a little bit, but there was still, for me, I can see why Ange did say we were nervous, because I felt that some of our passes weren't quite as crisp. I felt that sometimes a guy had to wait on the ball arriving at his feet, or a guy didn't take quite the right touch. No one in particular, but it just felt to me we were just a little bit off it. And that's why I was really pleased when we got the second goal, because I was a little bit nervous, because I thought, the way we're playing here, there's a potential they could get one chance, and that's all it takes. And to be fair to them, they scored. To me, it was a great goal. Obviously, Iwata should have done better, lost his man, but it was a great cross, great finish. Made me a little bit nervous. Probably not Paul. Me and Paul are very different like that, I guess. But the same point when we got when they scored, I felt there's as much chance of us getting a third as them scoring an equaliser, probably more, and that's what proved to be. But wasn't our best performance. But all that mattered was getting the win, and we've done it well in the end. So. Great to see.
Yeah, I don't really recall them coming out even at 2-0 down, or at 2-1 even. I don't really have much recollection of Inverness having much dare in the game at all. And to be honest, like, I'd been sitting, the English version of the Scottish Cup was on at 10 o'clock. So I was sitting watching that with the two Manchester teams and I was sitting there giving Man United absolute hell, because like the Man City players were like 10 yards inside the Man United half, like the centre backs, and the Man United line was still backing off. So like they were just playing the same tactics basically that Inverness were. And I was giving Man United so much crap for it. And then when the Scottish Cup came on, I was like, do you know what? Should I really be that harsh in Man United when like every single team that comes to play Celtic does the exact same thing? I don't know, man. But like it was two very one-sided, very unentertaining games of football. Somebody had mentioned it. There you go. Kenny Lawson in the comments. Instantly forgettable game. But the 8th treble is timeless. Do we how much? Well, I think we can come back to the treble talk. We can kind of focus on a little, just before we move on. What were some kind of standout moments, talking points from the game? For me, maybe Awata being at centre back, and really, I think did he contribute? Was his contribution as a player enough to outweigh just like being completely undone at that goal? And is Kobayashi out the team basically? He's not even in the starting or the bench. So, Anthony, what was going on there? Any other talking points you'd like to bring up about it?
Yeah, well, I'll touch on that first, Sean. Just, I mean, I said last week it's like a near Beaton-esque like thing, like playing a central midfielder and centre half, and I think that moment encapsulated that, because he got caught under the ball, he lost his runner, he didn't attack the ball. It was the one moment he had to defend, and he didn't defend. I mean, and fair play the Inverness Caley Thistle boy. He took his chance well. I mean, it was a great cross out of nowhere, really, and he got on the end of it, and fair play. But we could have defended that a lot better. The pressing on the cross was also not there either. I don't know who wasn't sort of close enough there, but there's a couple of things there. But I think Awata, in that sort of game when they're not really offering anything going forward, he basically became another midfielder. So he was just sort of like recycling possession, getting the passing going from the back. So, it's one of those things where, he stuffed up. It didn't cost us anything in the end result. No, it didn't. But it's just that cautionary tale of playing someone out of position. My probably play or moment of the match was probably the second goal. Hatate gets flattened. Calmac gets the ball, realizes that the quick free kick is on, gets the ball out to O carries the ball up the park. He gets fouled, but still has enough time to get the ball back out to McGregor out wide. McGregor has the time to see Abada ghosting in as Abada does, and it makes it 2-0. And then that sort of, at that point, you're thinking it's absolutely done and dusted sort of thing. And for me, that was probably the one bit of fluency. Well, not the one bit, but the bit of fluency in the game. I went, actually, that was like pure Ange Celtic, really fast playing, starting the ball quickly. So for me, that was probably the play of the day, as they used to do on Sports Tonight back in the day. But yeah, that for me was definitely the key bit of the match that sort of, like I said, sealed it for me and won us the treble.
What did you make of the captain's performance, Paul, and any other points around the game you'd like to bring up?
So look, I'll just touch on Awata briefly. Look, I think it's a bit he lost his man on the cross, but it is a brilliant cross. I think it's a bit unfair to say it's the only bit of defending he had to do. There's quite a bit of like cover, sweep up, tidy up. Like it's not like muscular, defensive, crucial last man, desperate tackling. But his reading of the game was great. When Starfelt needed cover, or one of the fullbacks needed cover on his side, he was there. And he stepped into midfield and he did play progressive passes. So I thought, there's enough there that his performance was pretty good. I actually saw some of the guys in the immediate aftermath that hadn't obviously watched the game inside the ground thought he was the best player on the park. So I think they maybe had a couple of beers, but it just goes to show different people read it differently. Carmack, look, I thought he grew into the game, as sometimes can be the case. Early doors, I didn't think he was, like a lot of them, wasn't really 100% on it and just lacking a bit of sharpness and crispness. But he certainly grew into the game in second half. He was, again, like as Anthony says, he's the one driving the team forward and linking the play and ultimately getting the assist for for the second goal, which is probably the crucial goal. I'd like to kind of highlight Abada's performance. I was disappointed that he didn't start the game. Like, I think maybe that was part of his injury from the week before, but I thought he showed enough in the 45 minutes against Aberdeen to deserve, if he was fit. Because like, if the whole team was fit and none of this, and obviously the other Kyogo and AJ made it as well, I'd have played the whole starting team from the Aberdeen game at the start of the cup finals. So I was a bit disappointed he didn't start. Obviously, Mera didn't get much change out of the game, and Abada was great when he came on. Obviously, he got his goal, and as he does, popping up in that position, and then his running cross for Jota's clincher is cracking as well. And look, well, there's lots of other stuff to cover, I guess, but I think and I know that his agent and he has apparently rejected contract talks previously. Whoever the manager is going into the next stage, we need to try and put another contract in front of him. I would be desperately trying to tie him down to a longer contract. He's 21, and got so much potential for growth. And if we do end up having to cash in on him early, we're probably not going to achieve the sell-on potential that we could. So yeah, I thought Abada was a real highlight when he came on, and I thought he had a really good second half.
Yeah, man, I totally agree. He got the assist for the last goal as well, and I thought Jota had a pretty good game as well. I know, Tommy, you pointed out that he let his man go for the Inverness goal that they got back into it, which they may or may not have deserved. But I thought, other than that, he actually did have a decent game, and it was good to see him finish it off at the end and get into the crowd with who was it ran up with him? Was it Abada?
Abada.
Up beside him? Yeah, up onto the boards. I can't remember. I was busy celebrating. I don't remember if there was a yellow card or not at that point, but it was.
I don't think so. No.
Nah. It's a weird one. It's weird.
I suppose last thing on that second goal. We're not ones for giving credit out to referees very often, but we should probably be. I wasn't sure if he actually took the free kick for the first foul and he just kept the game moving quickly.
I thought it was too.
I thought it was as well. So I don't know if it was like he went to think about taking a quick free kick and then actually just played on. I thought it was two advantages as well. But either way, a better credit to the ref for letting the game flow and obviously allowing that move to progress to ultimately the finish that we got.
Oh, look, it was about 2 a.m. at that point. I don't know, it was about 7 beers deep, so who knows? It could have been a quick free kick. Tommy, anything? Sorry, Paul, just to answer your point, I actually do think Maeda deserves to start, but in hindsight, it should have been Abada, yes. But I think Maeda had probably accrued enough, gravitas compared to Abada in the last 3-4 months. But that's, with hindsight, yes, Abada was the better choice. But yeah. Tommy, any of those points you'd like to address or anything bring up yourself around the game?
Yeah, look, I thought Iwata had a really good game. Personally, I thought he played really well. I thought, as Paul said, he'd done a lot of good covering, sweeping behind. I thought him and Starfelt worked well together. I thought they were two of our best players on the day. And then he just showed that he's probably a midfielder playing centre half of the goal for me. If that's CCV, that he probably clears that and keeps closer to his man. It's not a goal, but so I thought he had a really good game. I thought the referee was actually pretty good as well. I mean, fair play to the man from the Loudon Tavern. I thought he actually had a decent game. Although one thing I didn't like is just the constant, anytime Inverness are on the attack, all they have to do is fall over and it's a free kick. That still annoys me, but that happens to us every week. I completely agree with Paul on Abada. I think Abada is a real asset and I think he's got a heap of potential. He hasn't played as much the second half of this year or even this season as last season, but he still scores a lot of goals. He always pops up in the right spot. He's always trying to make something happen. And just one point, my point would be that the 3 goal scorers on Sunday were Kyogo, Jota and Abada. And we haven't seen them a lot on the pitch together in this season compared to last season. But if you actually look at the contribution those guys have made in the last 2 seasons, they've all been completely invaluable to us. And that actually, the third goal, one thing that reminded me of was the goal against Dundee United last season, just before the Rangers game, where we were in injury time. I think Rangers drew at Ross County or something like that. And we had to win to give us the chance to go top of the league for the first time that season. Jota went down the right-hand side, crossed it in, Abada takes the touch, finishes it, whereas this was just a complete opposite, Abada providing the assist and Jota scoring. So, we've been very fortunate to have those 3 for us for the last couple of years. And they made the difference for us on Sunday, because I thought the midfield was just a little bit off. And one final point I'd just like to make is I thought the subs made a real difference when they come on. I thought All was really good at a hand in the second and the third goal. Just looked really quite sharp. So I think there's a lot of potential there. I thought Turnbull looked good, Haksabanovic looked good, and obviously Abada. So I think everyone made a contribution. So yeah, interesting to see what happens going forward. But some of the signings Ange has made, they've just been absolute top quality for us.
Yeah. So just to kind of, thanks, Tommy. In terms of the game, it wasn't, as we've all said, it wasn't like a classic game. It will probably go down in the annals of history alongside like 1-0 John Joe Perry or Doumbé, that kind of game where it's just, an overmatched team, very much like the English game that was on just beforehand. But what it does as well is it gives us this world record 8th treble that, that's great. I think Callum McGregor's on 5 trebles, something like that. It puts us on 116 total trophies, which takes us past the record for a Scottish team, which was previously held by Rangers of 115. And Sevco need to get another 114 now to catch us if they want to match our trophy haul. So we're now the most successful contiguous Scottish team. And as just to kind of address what's going on in the comments right now is... Pete McGee saying, no disrespect, guys, but we're more concerned about the manager situation. That game is now water under the bridge. Can we move on? And I think you can kind of tell in our voices at the start that, like, even though we've just won a world record treble, like, we are feeling a bit flat. And the reason for that is not that we've won a treble and not that we're sick of winning or anything like that. Far from it. Michael McDonald straight from the off. I'm looking forward to the and more part of the show. So we're trying really, really hard to be focusing on the positive here, but there's obviously this big, massive elephant in the room, and it's all kicking off in the comments throughout this. Very few people actually engaging on what's going on with the happened in the game. So let's have a chat about it then. Anthony, first up, would you like to address any events that have happened since Celtic won the Scottish Cup? Take your pick at random.
Obviously, there was a lot of rumblings during the week. Ange was sort of employing the Obi-Wan Kenobi technique from Return of the Jedi when he was saying from a certain point of view, I wasn't speaking to Spurs or anything like that. So obviously his management team were, and progressions were being made, but he probably wasn't actually talking to them directly. So obviously Celtic have given permission this afternoon for him to speak officially with Spurs. So that's the first official thing that we've heard. Up until then, it's all been rumours, and Fabrizio Romano reported yesterday, so usually he's pretty much on the money. So obviously if it goes ahead, because obviously he hasn't signed yet, but it's looking more and more likely that that's what's going to happen. So based on that assumption, I'll obviously be very sad if he leaves. I thought he'd have one more crack at Europe. I thought he'd have one more go at the Champions League. And he keeps referring to building this house. And I kind of just feel he's left a couple of rooms empty and unrenovated. So, for me, I kind of feel like it's unfinished business. But from Ange's point of view, is he going to get another offer from a top 6 club at the end of the season? He's obviously conscious of how Brendan Rodgers was perceived leaving mid-season. And you don't know what the answer to that is. I mean, say, for argument's sake, we get stelped in the Champions League next season. Does he star rise? Does he star fall? If he doesn't win the league because he's spent too much time in Europe or whatever, you just don't know. So he's probably looked at it and went, yeah, it's a risk, but is it a risk worth taking? Probably for him. From his point of view, has he been remunerated well? Would the Australia job have paid well? Would coaching Brisbane Roar, the Mariners in Japan, would he be made much money out of that? This deal will set him up for life. And I know we're a Celtic podcast and we're talking about Celtic, but if you look at it from Ange's point of view, in Australia, what's the yardstick that you measure a good footballer by? It's, did they do anything in England? Did they make it in England? Did they make it in the English Premier League? And unfortunately, money talks. And I just feel that as much as, we love Celtic, but we're playing in a global game. We're in a small sort of fish pond, and there's unfortunately bigger fish down the road in England. And we're unfortunately, it's a harsh reminder of the situation that Celtic is in. And that, it's one thing to sell players and turn a profit on players, but when it's your manager after 2 years, it hurts. It really, really does. And it's certainly put the ball back in Michael Nicholson's court, because we've been talking him up, going, oh, his signings and stuff have been great, like he's getting all the paperwork done really quickly. Well, I kind of hope in his top drawer he's got a short list of candidates ready to rock and roll, because we cannot afford an Eddie Howe, dragged out saga to replace Ange if Ange goes.
Paul, do you think that Ange has got enough infrastructure put in place that if he does move on, that we're solid now, or do you think we're going to be caught with our pants down here, that we're still a year away from where Ange was taking us in a rebuild?
Difficult to say, isn't it? So I guess it depends, and we're all speaking hypothetically here. We all expect that having been given the permission means it's just about a done deal. But it depends. Does he take the rumors that he might take some of the backroom staff, which he's never really done before? He's sort of pitched up with us on his own, and he's done that in most of his other gigs.
I think he did one person.
So, but look, without touching too heavily on the Spurs side, because it's not really our focus, they are an absolute shambles. So, he's if he's thinking of taking backroom staff, that's probably to get some strength around him to deal with that, and it's obviously a much bigger mess to fill. It's an even bigger mess to deal with than we had to deal with. Like, he's going to have much more split in the camp from the fan base, from what I can gather, in terms of how they're reacting. So the infrastructure wise, we thought we would move to a director of football model, and we thought that was needed before Ange came in. Ange effectively decided, or was given free rein to pretty much become that and the manager. He had pretty much full control over football matters as far as we can gather. However, in his time in position, more people have come in around that, which seemed to be, their club. They've been hired by the club, not necessarily him. He's obviously had a say in picking them, but you think the majority of those would stay. So I'd like to think we're well down the road with it. It's really disappointing. Of course it is. I think, well, look, obviously a lot of fans are getting emotional. Why wouldn't you? He's built, we were absolute shambles before he came in. The club was in disarray. The fan base was split. The atmosphere was toxic. We'd had a season of nobody being allowed to go to games or get into the ground. So it was just an absolute lowest ebb. And in the space of, probably less than 12 months, he pretty much single-handedly bound all of those factors back together and put us back on top. So, obviously there's an emotional connection, and he played on that. Of course he did. But I just think this has probably come a bit earlier than he expected. I think he probably thought he would have to do a good run in the Champions League before a top 6 Premier League club would come calling. And only because Spurs are in such a fucking mess, excuse my language, and other people have knocked him back, that eventually he's got his opportunity earlier than expected. And, he's probably deemed it to be an offer too good to refuse. By all accounts, in the rumour mill, and who knows, Desmond's been around more in the last few weeks than he's been around in months, as far as I can gather. So I imagine there was a reasonably strong play to keep him. But, he's probably multiplying his wages by 5, 6, 7, 8 times. So, and, if you look at it purely from a football point of view, how often have we seen him, on the sidelines shaking his head because, if moves broken down because the passing's not quite there, or somebody's ability hasn't been quite up to scratch. He's clearly hugely ambitious. And therefore he's going to get the chance to work with the absolute elite players in the game and be able to test himself at that level. And, more than just the cash, I think that's been too big a pull. And again, at 57 years old, having scrapped his way to a gig as big as us, he's more than repaid, Celtic for giving him the opportunity. I see a lot on social media saying, "Oh, you should be grateful we plucked him from Security of Japan." Well, as I said, we were in absolute disarray, and he's turned that around and won 5 out of 6 trophies and put us in the best position. If he leaves, we're in the absolute best position for a new manager to walk in the door ever. Strong squad, long contracts, young team. They have decent infrastructure, a board that seems to be supportive of spending money, a biggish budget, and Champions League football. I don't really see how, we can't be, we'd never want to lose your manager, but the nature of being successful is we'll lose our manager. Same as, we can either be mediocre and not have decent managers and decent players and they'll hang around and then we'll want them to leave because they're not good enough, or we have success and unfortunately they'll go.
Well, it was Ange that said, get used to the idea of losing your heroes. E. O'Connor in the comments saying, I'm not happy he's going, but can't fault him if financially settles his life out. Tommy, do you think he's done enough to earn the right to have taken this? Kaiser saying Celtic offered to make Ange the highest paid manager in our history, more than Brendan, and a 30 million transfer budget. What do you think what's your moral position here? Not moral position, but you know what I mean? Like, do you think it's fair enough, or do you think he's leaving in an arch? What do you think? Do you give him best wishes, or is he doing his dirty?
Oh, look, it's I'm sad and I'm disappointed because I genuinely believed that he was a great fit for the club and he aligned with a lot of the club's sort of morals and values and the way the club was, just from his upbringing and stuff, and obviously the way he's communicated with the fans over time. At the moment, it just seems a little bit hollow. It seems that it maybe wasn't quite as sincere as what I thought it was, because this seems to me like maybe the first opportunity he's got in his jumping ship, and it's only been 2 years. And I'm pretty sure he said that he wants to put this club back on the stage that it belongs, and that's as a force in Europe. And he hasn't done that yet. I mean, we competed to a point this season in Europe, but we still get knocked out 2 or 3 times. So disappointed, but then at the end of the day, you have to look at his side of the fence. He's 57 years old. He's always been career driven. He's always been never afraid to make big decisions for himself if he thinks it's in the best interests of him and his family. And I'm assuming that's what he's doing this time. He thinks he can go down and he thinks he can make it work. And why wouldn't he? So it's not as bad for me as Brendan Rodgers sort of just up in sticks and going, because obviously there's subliminal messages from previous when Brendan Rodgers was the manager and then left us mid-season. He's seen it out. And to be honest, the last couple of weeks, the fact that he hasn't come out and just completely denied it, which he could have done, has made me think that it's probably already a done deal. And that's why this Scottish Cup final on Saturday felt a bit like the one that Edouard scored twice when Neil Lennon got the job in the shower. So look, I've sort of got mixed feelings on it. I love what he's done for us. I mean, he's completely turned the club around. We were a shambles when he came in. The players he's brought in, the football we play, we go right to the end. So it just makes me think of an Ian Brown quote, I think at the last Stone Roses gig, which might have been in Glasgow. I think he said something along the lines of, don't be sorry that it's over, but just be glad that it's happened. And that's sort of the approach I'm trying to take at the moment. So just be glad we had him for a couple of years and what he's done. Because Celtic will always be there. It doesn't matter who's the manager.
Yeah, I think there's a similar thing in one of the Bluey stories, where sometimes people come in and out your lives, and you should just enjoy the times when they are there, even when they leave, kind of thing. On what you mentioned there, Stevie J has commented the team is still there. Karl Mack is like a manager in the dressing room. He is still there, so we could maybe hope to see some continuity in that sense. I think in the past we've had that happen a few times. Like there's a strong argument that when Ronnie Dyla comes in, he just picks up the team and carries on where it's left off. Or Neil Lennon when he took over for Brendan Rodgers, for example, like that sometimes. These things can happen, and then Ronnie Dyla tanks in the second season because his ideas are being laughed at by that point or just not hitting. So there could be a good chance for someone, even John Kennedy, to take on that. Anthony, who would you be? Who do you prefer candidate? And assuming that continuity is your preference, or would you rather have a new idea in there?
Well, it's an interesting conversation. I mean, obviously, again, we're prefacing this on the thing that Ange is still currently the Celtic manager. So, obviously assuming that he's moving on. No, I'm inclined to sort of go a bit further afield. So I know Graham Potter for me would maybe be an option. And the Knutsford's the guy who keeps it manned about as well. Someone outside of I know there's been a lot of talk about Brendan Rodgers. I wouldn't not want Brendan Rodgers because of what he did and the way he left and all the rest of it. I just don't believe in going backwards with reappointing a manager that you had before. We saw what happened with Neil Lennon. Yes, he got us over the line for the triple treble or quadruple treble. I mean, fair play, but it didn't ended in tears. And I just feel that, we really should be looking further afield. The Ange appointment worked, and whether that was a fluke, a bolt from beyond, whatever it was, sometimes thinking outside the square or just taking that one step removed from Celtic or from Scottish football and totally can yield very good results. So I'm just inclined to think that, we need to sort of cast the net wide. Like I said, I hope Michael Nicholson's got some candidates lined up. And why are we not game enough to go and approach someone? If someone's in a job but we think they're the best candidate, say we want to speak to them and see if we can make it happen. We shouldn't just be limiting ourselves to candidates that are currently out of a job. I know obviously it makes it easier if they are out of a job, but we're Celtic, we're in the Champions League. It's it's potentially a good position for a manager who's looking maybe either to get back into England or to raise their profile. And I know that's not what a lot of the supporters want to hear, but it's an attractive post. And if you can deliver success while you're here, then it's win-win. And that's what Ange did. Yeah, we took a chance on Ange, but Ange had 20 years coaching experience before we took him to Celtic. And we reaped the benefit of that. 5 trophies out of 6 in 2 years. Sure, it would have been great if it had carried on for longer. But, he's leaving at the end of a season. I suspect that these talks will be over very, very quickly. So if he is going to go to Tottenham, we're going to know within the next 24 to 48 hours. And then Celtic should hopefully be in a position where we are sitting down with our preferred candidate by the end of the week, locking it in. And then we move on. And then we go on the next journey. But I have to say, the players this year at the end of the season looked tired. They looked flogged out. And that is a direct result of Ange's coaching methods. He trains them very, very hard. And it does take it out of you. And I feel that the performances, the last, so many games of the season, we look like we're running on empty to a certain degree. I know we won the league over the line. And then, it's just, I feel that a change won't necessarily be a bad thing. We just can't see it at the moment because we don't know what that looks like, and change is hard. And I'm ask my wife, I'm not a good person when it comes to change. But like once we get there and we get a new manager in place, we'll look forward and the skies look a bit clearer, and we'll know what's happening.
Yeah. I know what you're saying, but yeah. Okay. Yeah, man. I remember there was a thing with Rodgers as well, where like he would always fail in his third season, like when he did well with Leicester and Liverpool. And it was the same thing. Apparently, it was like he would always thrash his players and get 2 years out of them. And I still had hopes that Ange wouldn't fall victim to that because of the high player turnover. So as you say, you are milking these players for all you're worth, but if you're turning them over, then maybe you're going to be able to maintain that for more than 2 years. But we'll never know now, I guess, unless Ange sits down with Daniel Levy and has a massive change of heart, but I don't really see it. One thing that we do need to look to, though, as well, other than just background continuity, is on-field continuity as well. So a comment here from Mahesh. Backroom, most importantly, the data guy, and then he's also linked that to and rumours about Kyogo. So the rumour is 25 to 30 million to Tottenham for Kyogo. And Patrick McLaughlin, I seen a report last week. Ange intends to take CCV down there, make him captain, build his defence around him. Paul, are you concerned about these reports as well? And who would be your preferred your thoughts on the direction forward?
Yeah, so I'll touch on potential players going first. I'd be really surprised if CCV followed Ange if he goes. Given that that's where we got him from, and he wasn't fancied there through their whole system for about 5 or 6 years. And look, as good as I think he is, we never really got to see him at Champions League level. So, he is awesome, but he's awesome in the Premier League. We've not seen too much of him in Europe. You'd think at a club as big as Spurs, there would have been some point of opportunity to get him in the team, and he was serially on loan until we took him in, and obviously he's amazing as he is now. I don't think, look, it's all well and good. We're going to automatically think he's our best player or one of our best players, so he's at risk. Kyogo likewise. I think Kyogo's more likely, to be honest. He's got, regardless of how tight or otherwise Levy's going to be with the cash, they're going to have shitloads of money to spend, especially if they sell Kane for 100 million, which is rumoured. That'll give them amount to spend. I don't know, like Kyogo's going to get chances, right? So he plays off the shoulder and he's quick, so that's a possibility. Obviously Ange knows him, knows what he'll get out of him, but I don't know. I think Kyogo maybe, and maybe Hatate, because obviously he's ripe for the step up to the Premier League. I think we'll hang on to some of the other key players. But a lot depends on the next manager, right? So it really depends who that is, their style of play. If we go for a continuity candidate, and that doesn't have to be Kennedy, obviously, or somebody inside the club, it could be somebody that just plays the same kind of style. And obviously, we've talked about Nuts, and I think he'd be a really good candidate for the gig. And if he came in, then he plays a very similar style to Ange, and we saw that when Bodo turned us over. So I'm not, like, my view is the EPL's budget is so big that they'll be going at players at a higher level than just cherry picking from us, was my gut feeling. I think there would have been a little bit of turnover anyway, and a new manager, there's naturally potentially going to be turnover, just depending on style of playing and the like. The good news is all our players are hooked up on decent contracts, so anyone going, we can get a fee for. There's apparently a net spend of 30 million available. That figure's been bandied around quite a lot. So it's 30 million potentially over and above sales. So I don't know. I still think we're very well set up. It really comes down to getting the appointment right. And as I say, we're an attractive proposition, as attractive as we've ever been. I'd like to see us show a fair amount of ambition. And if we're given, we've all got PTSD from the board. I've seen quite a lot of comments with a lot of emotive chat about potential candidates and the board being this, that, and the other. The board have certainly showed a bit more ambition, and despite how long they hung on for Howe would have been a great appointment. He's proved that at Newcastle. Yes, he's had a ton of cash to spend, but it's a league with a ton of cash to spend. Everybody's got a ton of cash to spend, so it still takes something to finish in the top four, and he's achieved that at first turn. So he'd have been a good hire, and out of the fire, however lucky you think we were, and Ange obviously is a lucky man. We've heard that plenty of times, and he said it himself. So he was a great hire as well. So rumor was that was Lowell Jr. Through his CFG network. So you'd like to think that there is a bit of work done in the background. Any club that's rolling 12-month rolling contracts on managers should have a short list in the top drawer at any given point in time. That should be part of, it's just the same time the scouting team are scouting players, they should be scouting managers. So we seem to have a bit more of our shit together. I certainly hope so. I definitely don't want to see the same old usual suspects trotted out. Steve Clarke, no chance. Moyes, no thank you. Keane, you're having a laugh. He's a pundit. Martin O'Neill, a legend, but long since retired. Let's just be away from all that nonsense. I see the Brendan Rodgers bandwagon getting, faster by the hour, apparently. I'm the same as Anthony. I don't think we can go back. Yes, he's a good coach. Yes, he's got, he's had results, and, Dermot Desmond likes him, and he would support him. But I don't think it's very ambitious. And if we want to push on ambitions, Rodgers made no progress in Europe. So that's the biggest reason for me for giving somebody else a crack. I like the idea of Potter. We could be imaginative and go for a younger base manager that's really playing really nice, attractive football. I've heard Michael Carrick as a name being bandied around. He's done a great job at Borough, but he's really young and fresh. Ruud van Nistelrooy left PSV because he wasn't supported. Is that an option? Gallardo has been mentioned. He's available as well and left River Plate, most successful River Plate manager. He'd be an ambitious appointment, but I reckon he's probably looking at a top 3 or 4 league The danger with Knutson is apparently Ajax are keen on him as well. So I think that's if they should make it ambitious, make it imaginative. We're an attractive proposition. Yeah, let's see where it lands us. But hopefully, it's not one of the usual suspects in a pretty negative and unambitious appointment.
Mahesh is saying no past managers with baggage with the club. Need someone that gets Celtic's attacking mindset. And obviously, the name that's bounding around a lot is Rodgers. Tommy, do you think we need a name with some gravitas to keep a hold of some of these players, like your Kyogos, your Hitates, Jota, CCV? They're probably the four. They would likely be taken down, be vultured off, or do you think there's something to appointing Brendan Rodgers just for the simple reason that big players might be more likely to sign and or stay?
Oh, look, Brendan Rodgers, one of the biggest issues, obstacles for me,
or another big name, but yes.
No, look, for me, it doesn't need to be a big name. It just needs to be the right person. And in all reality, it's probably going to be the guy that Dermot Desmond thinks is the right person. If Dermot Desmond thinks he's the right person, that's probably who it's going to be. So who that could be, who knows? I mean, it could be any of the names that have just been mentioned. I like the sound of Graham Potter as well. I quite liked him when he was at Brighton. Obviously didn't work out for him at Chelsea, but he had a pretty tough job going in there. So for me, but Brendan Rodgers, I think, is a non-starter. I just can't see him coming back to the club. Well, Peter Lawwell's still at the club, chairman of the board. It doesn't really matter. The key is getting someone in and getting them in early. As Paul touched on, we should have a list of names of keeping our eyes on potential managers if and when our current manager leaves, particularly when we don't have a sporting director in place, which was a lot of the talk around when Neil Lennon was to be replaced. We needed the right structure, but we let Ange do all that. So now we're losing Ange. What does that look like? So it's about getting the right guy in, get him in early enough, and making sure that he gets a chance to sit down with the players. And, guys like Kyogo, Jota, CCV, Hatate, I mean, they're key for us. But as I said with the manager as well, at the end of the day, it's not the end of the world. If these guys do move on, we just need to make sure that you get the right people in place in the right role. So you get the right manager, the right coaches, those sort of people, so that we replace them properly. But in terms of names, I mean, it could be anyone, but I personally wouldn't be going back to Brendan Rodgers so soon after what happened a couple of years ago.
And E. O'Connor's mentioned what you said there, Tommy. We'll try to land the Japanese and Korean star. We didn't get last window, so hopefully there is some continuity in terms of transfer dealings as well. Anthony, do you think that we need to have a think about the structure, or should it just be a one-for-one change? Should we be looking at a director of football maybe? What do you think?
Well, this is where a director of football sort of, gives you a bit more peace of mind, because at least you know the transfer policy and that doesn't change. But, when you've got somebody like Ange who's responsible for everything and he leaves, it leaves a massive hole. So how do you fill that? If it was me and I'm a manager, I'd want the control. I'm a bit of a control freak, but you're the one who has to suffer in the media if the team's not playing well. They're your signing. So for me, I can understand having someone who's in charge of everything. I guess the question mark around Ange is, if these rumors are that he's going to tap John Kennedy and take him with him, potentially, could potentially take some players as well. How does that make us feel as Celtic fans? It's like, well, not only are you leaving, but you're taking people with you. Brendan Rodgers obviously ripped all of the backroom staff out when he left. So how much of a hole is going to have to be filled when Ange does leave? So it's a very, very good question. I don't know if the sporting director thing works. I mean, did it work for the Huns? They had Ross Wilson and Steven Gerrard, and I think they had as many hits and misses signing wise. I would have thought. I thought Ange was pretty good. I thought Brendan was pretty average in the transfer market, to be honest. I think there's been a bit of revisionism by some people about how good he has been in the transfer market. So yeah, it's a hard one. I mean, it depends on the appointment. If you've got somebody who's got the strength of character, to be able to, do it all, then I say, yeah, great, go for it. But, it depends. If the thing is, Ange had a lot of experience. He was coming in with 20 plus years coaching experience. He started at the lowest level and worked his way up. It depends on who we appoint. If we've got somebody who's got that level of experience and knows how to manage the market and has his targets, then great. If they're a younger manager and they're maybe not quite as experienced, then maybe you do need that, that sort of sporting director type role. But again, and almost you're making another appointment. Who's that, and who's that going to be? And then that comes back to the old Pals Act as well. It's like, oh, Martin O'Neill, Gordon Strachan, like it's the same names that get thrown around for that position as well. And I don't necessarily think that's beneficial. I mean, it's great having someone that's loyal to the club, but does that equal performance? That's debatable. And this is the thing, like, as Paul said, we want someone who's ambitious. We want the club to be ambitious, but it's a double-edged sword. You get an ambitious manager, he'll bring you success, or should bring you success, but the risk is obviously that English Premier League comes knocking 2 or 3 seasons later and takes them away from you. So, would you rather have that, or would you rather have a mediocre appointment where you're up one season, down the next, mumbling along, somebody who's loyal, and basically you'd have to sack them and get rid of them, but they're never going to get tapped on the shoulder? I mean, do you want that? I don't think so. I take the ambition and you roll with it, and you take the goods, and then when this happens, you dust yourself off, you find the next person, and you go again. And I say we're all in various stages of grief at the moment, but once we, like I said, once we appoint someone, like I said, the stars start to become a bit clearer, and we know, what the trajectory is. But we're dealing with a lot of unknowns at the moment, and I think that's why, we're sort of in the situation that we're in as fans.
Yeah, but the players have come out in the media recently and in the past and said like Postecoglou is a very standoffish manager. He's not like on the training ground with the players. Like he really delegates the tactics to the coaches, who then transfer that to the players. Is that so? If Postecoglou goes in his own, Paul, is that like a sign for like a hope that maybe there is continuity in that sense, that on the training ground there doesn't appear to be any change from the fans' perspective, and then maybe just Steve Clarke or Gordon Strachan come in or whatever? I don't know. What do you think, Paul?
Don't even start with those kind of appointments. Jesus. Look, it comes down to who you appoint, right? So, you appoint somebody that's had a long-standing backroom staff. He probably wants to bring them all, and maybe you keep one or two. Well, I did mention Ruud van Nistelrooy, so maybe not first.
Second.
But yes, I'll give you second, Scott. But yeah, no, look, it depends. If it's somebody that's got a big backroom staff and has worked with the same people again and again and again, look, like was probably seems to be the sticking block with Eddie Howe, then he wants to bring all of them lock, stock, and maybe one or two. If they're not wanted by Ange, maybe they get a gig, or maybe they're asked to move on or shuffled around into more junior roles if they want to accept them. For me, the continuity thing with the coaching staff, it gets you through the initial bump, but really it's about a new boss. If we need one, and we expect we will, it's about a new boss putting his stamp on it and selling that. You're effectively trying to sell a dream to the players. And Ange talked about this. You need to get the players on side. You need to build a culture that everyone's pushing in the same direction. And the next boss will have to do that. And if there's people that's face doesn't fit or don't want to follow on that journey, get them out, like move them on and recycle. Like I say, there's budget. There'll be fees to come if players don't want to hang around or don't suit the next manager's style. And look, we've touched on this, kind of sort of alluded to this, but nobody's bigger than Celtic, right? This is a really disappointing situation that's come to fruition, if it does. But we were expecting this either 12 months' time or probably for the most of us, at best, 24 months' time. Unfortunately, it's come a bit sooner than we hoped and expected. But look, let's use the strong position we're in and push forward. The director of football thing is an interesting one for me, because I think it, whilst it's got hits and misses around the world, every major or nearly every major big club on the planet operates that model, and it does give you that continuity of I guess internal structure. From the sports science division, nutrition, fitness, scouting, they all sit under the director of football. And so managers can come and go, much like players, but the director of football and the strategy for the club is kind of set. Now, the danger of that is, what's to stop if we get a good director of football? What's to stop one of them get poached? Essentially, we're fodder now and we have had it for players for a long time. But look, our last two decent managers have been poached by the EPL. Obviously, Lennon got sacked, so nobody's picking him up. But the last two successful managers, assuming Ange goes, have been poached by the EPL. Our best players will be poached, and if we put a director of football in, potentially they would get poached as well. However bad Ross Wilson was, he got poached, I think, by somebody down there.
Poached.
Well, they seemed delighted to get rid of him, but he went to a bigger and better job. So,
a team that's won the European Cup. Yeah, sorry, but on your point, Paul, about culture, Tommy, do you think we should be looking for a manager that matches the existing culture, or one that has his own strong culture that might be better and even gives us better progress in Europe next year, or European performances?
It's a good question, because if you think about where we were before Ange came in and where we are now, if you talk about from the outside looking in, the culture in the dressing room, in the dressing room and in the club looks 10 times better than it did before he came in. So do you want someone to come in and just keep that going, or do you want someone to come in and make their own mark in the team? For me, you want a combination of both. You'd want someone to come in and be his own man, his own personality, and put his own stamp on the team. But I think the difference is now we've got a stronger dressing room than we did a couple of years ago. So sort of fitting in with that, we're coming from a better position. And look, for me, as I said, it's about getting the right man, who that might be. It might be someone that comes from left field that we don't even know about. But I think we're in a really good place compared to where we were 2 years ago. And that's why, as I said at the top, Celtic will be here long after all of us are gone. And they were here long before we were all here. So as much as this is disappointing, you're not going to get a jibe in there, were you?
No, I was going to say there was a lot of Rangers fans that thought that, and then they watched their team die in 2012. So
Yeah, look, I don't foresee that happening. So, but for me, as I said, it's not the end of the world. I'm sad, disappointed, and I hope we get the right person. And we should have been planning for this contingency 12 months ago.
Cool. So we'll just do a couple of round rooms to finish off. I've got Michael McDonald's comment bookmarked there, and we'll kind of come back to that. But before we do that, actually, you know what, let's do it while we're on the topic. So Michael McDonald's comment: Sean, Anthony, Tommy, Paul, just quick. Don't go on, don't waffle, don't give too many caveats. If you had to put your house on it, who do you think will be our manager next season? Anthony.
It's not who I want. It's who
you want. Who do you think it will be?
Who do you think it will be? Well, I mean, at the moment on betting, it's Brendan Rodgers, isn't it? I mean, it's not that I don't want Brendan Rodgers, but I mean, at the moment, according to everything that's been thrown in front of us, it's going to be Snakey himself. But we'll see.
Paul?
I actually haven't got a clue who. I don't have a thought on who it'll be. I've got clear thoughts on who, 2 or 3 it could be. I would like it to be. I have no idea. It depends. If we could go ambitious, or we could go retrospective. Bookies don't get it too wrong, but I don't know. I'll pass on this one. Play the 5th.
Tommy?
Yeah, look, I'm in the same boat. If I had to put my house on it, I probably couldn't. But if I had to go on the noise at the moment, and I heard that Brendan Rodgers has bought a house in Glasgow. I heard that he was up. I saw he was up the Cup semi-final a few weeks back. If I had to, I'd say Brendan Rodgers.
There's definitely been a softening, and for me, the writing was on the wall when he started appearing at our games. The Cup semi-final as a guest of Willie Haughey. I'm like, yeah, sure. And that was I believe that was immediately after the Dermot Desmond Postecoglou picture that was leaked on Twitter. So the smoke was very much there at that point, and Ange's post-match comments at that point were all very non-committal. And I think, was it on a Monday night we had that conversation about it, where it was like a support group for me, like, yeah, no, Sean, he's definitely staying. And then 3 months later, here we are. But it is what it is. I think if you're again, similar to you guys. If I'm having to bet on someone right now, it seems likely it's going to be Brendan Rodgers. And I'm very conflicted in how I feel about that. What I want is success for Celtic. And if whoever is appointed, unless there's some moralistic reason, like you can be morally opposed. I don't think I'm morally opposed to Rodgers joining. I'm just maybe not sure it's the best choice, but unless there's a moral opposition, I'll support whoever it is to succeed until they don't, and then I won't. That's my simple position on it.
My thing with Rodgers, sorry.
Yeah, go on.
Sorry, just my thing on Rodgers is like, for me, before he went, it seemed pretty apparent there was a lot of conflict between him and Peter Lawwell. If Lawwell's still at the club in a position of power, like, I'm not sure how that would work. That's the only thing that sort of makes me doubt whether that could happen or not. So I don't know what everyone else thinks of that.
I think we could do a whole show on that, so we'll leave it for the Tuesday and Wednesday, guys. So just to finish off on a positive, we did win a world record 8th treble at the weekend, even though it has been somewhat soured quite quickly. So we haven't had too much time to enjoy it. But on that game, we had a lot of players playing and playing well, and we'll just do a quick usual finish up with around the room. Who was the man of the match in the Scottish Cup final at the weekend? Anthony.
I'm going to go with Cal Mack. He's just a winner. He wins cup finals. He hasn't been beaten in a cup final. His quick thinking got us the second goal. For me, captain's performance and deserving of the match.
Paul?
And just before one thing I want to say is his position in the club now becomes even more important, particularly if Ange leaves and some of the coaching staff leave, then he is effectively the continuity between the new manager and the team, because, he is that gaffer on the park. So, I don't expect that he'll be poached or leave, but his role in the club has just become even more critical over these next few months.
Yep. Paul?
Cal was in the mix, but I'm going to give it to Abada. Great movement for the second goal. Brilliant running cross for the clincher. So 45 minutes, but Abada for me.
That's a good shot as well. Tommy?
I'm going to agree with Paul, to be honest, because actually I was thinking of as well. I thought he'd a really poor first 5 or 10 minutes. Didn't let it get to him. Come on, made the difference. Big hands, obviously, in the second and third goals. Special mention to Cal Mack. I thought he was terrific, particularly in the second half and driving forward for the second. But I'll give it to Abada as well.
And Joseph McGonigal in the comments is saying Iwata. Not too many shouts for that one, but he did have a comfortable game on the ball, played well. He spent a lot of time on the ball, I guess. Cal Mack was great as well, particularly for that second goal. You mentioned Anthony was the best move of the game. But I think Paul and Tommy have convinced me, and I'm going to go with Abada. Even though Matt Riley got the BBC man of the match, I thought he was great as well. He was actually the first name that came into my head, but
Jota got it for the BBC.
He got it on. Jota got it through the BBC on their coverage. But you're right, Sean. Matt O'Reilly got it on their report online.
Yeah, and I think it was one of those games where there was like 4 or 5 people it could have been. So yeah, and I think if Abada had started, he'd have been the clear candidate. But I think it's that one of those things when you come on at half time, there's a reluctance, right? Right, so what we'll do then is we are over an hour, so we'll just pass around the room for any final thoughts, comments before we wrap up. Anthony?
Look, nothing really to sort of say. I'm just sort of actually tell you, there's a show on SBS in Australia. It's a BBC show, but Blue Lights, set in Belfast, and it's cop show. It's just 6 episodes. It leaves you so on edge. Like it's just because it's an under and cast, you just think anyone could die at any minute. Like it's just it really is quite a good watch. So I do recommend that. And tune in the Tuesday and Wednesday shows, because if you think we did a deep dive into Ange potentially leaving Celtic, trust me, if the group chat is anything to go by today, there's going to be some fiery discussions over the next couple of days. So please do tune in. Paul?
Yeah, a couple of things for me. First one is still football related. Ross County managed to survive in the Premier League with a late comeback and a penalty shootout. They were 3-0 down on aggregate with very little time left. So yeah, they've hung on in there. This will be gutted, but if you're 3-0 up with less than a half to go and you can't hold on, you probably don't deserve to step up to the top division. And yeah, just I guess a positive note. That's completely unfootball related because we're probably a bit over that already, and we'll be going through the mill over the next few days, I guess. Noel Gallagher released his newest album with the High Flying Birds on Friday, and it's a massive return to form. So if you're an old school Oasis fan like me, then get your lugs around that over the next few days and maybe block out some of the noise and gnashing of teeth on Celtic Twitter and the like. And yeah, listen to the Chief. His album Council Skies is well worth a look.
Thanks, Paul. Tommy?
Yeah, not much for me, mate. I've got no TV and no music to share this week, other than to say what I've said a couple of times tonight, is that, it's not the end of the world. Celtic will live on, and no one's bigger than Celtic. Hail, hail.
Yeah. Look, and yeah, it's definitely been in my mind. I know you guys mentioned before show like the Neil Lennon showers was probably the worst treble, but especially since it was I don't know, and then you've also got the COVID delayed one, which happened over like an 18-month window. But yeah, this one feels like the most shortest lived celebration anyway. So we'll console ourselves with that. Michael McDonald in the comments, top show. Thanks, Michael. Steve J, good chat. Thanks. And Mickey Monaghan making the great point that it's been a therapy couch day. Definitely has. No actual recommendations for me. I'm just been pretty hectic with school, so I've got Super Mario Brothers movie lined up to watch once I get my reports finished, and I'm looking forward to that. Is it good? Looking forward to it. Yeah. Other than that, we'll sign off for tonight. And please like the podcast, subscribe to all our socials. Please tune in Tuesday and Wednesday. And
we'll be back. We'll be back next Monday. We'll be back next Monday.
We'll be back next Monday. And try to enjoy the treble once the dust is settled on the upheaval with Postecoglou. Other than that, take it easy. Enjoy your week. And we'll see you all later. Hail, hail.
Hail, hail.
Hail, hail.